They burned my home to the ground, thinking they'd extinguished a simple rancher. What they really did was ignite the man I'd spent 20 years trying to bury. The smell of your life burning is something you never forget. It's not just wood and smoke. It's the scent of pine from the beams I cut myself, the faint perfume of my wife Sarah's lavender bushes crisping in the heat, the acrid tang of 20 years of memories turning to ash. I stood there on the ridge overlooking my ranch, the pre-dawn Texas sky painted in sick oranges and reds that had nothing to do with the sunrise. All that was left of our home, the sanctuary I'd built after a lifetime of sanctioned violence, was a roaring, skeletal pyre. My dog, Buster, a grizzled old blue lacy, whined at my side, his body pressed tight against my leg. Sarah was behind me, wrapped in a horse blanket inside my truck, her silent sobs the only sound besides the crackle of the flames. It had started 3 months ago. A dusty black SUV with tinted windows rolling up my long gravel driveway. 3 men, all sharp suits and cheap cologne, stepping out into the heat. They didn't belong here, not in this world of mesquite, dust, and honest work. The leader, a man with a gold tooth that flashed when he smiled his predator's smile, called himself Ricardo. He said his employers were very interested in my land, said its proximity to an underused state road made it valuable for logistics. I knew what that meant. A smuggling corridor. I told him my land wasn't for sale. My granddaddy worked this land, my daddy worked this land, and I'd be buried in it. I told him to get off my property. They didn't like that. The smiles vanished. The threats started, veiled at first. Accidents happen out here, Mr. Thorne. Snakes, fires, so isolated. A week later, my prize bull was dead, a neat hole drilled between its eyes. A week after that, 1/2 mile of my fence was cut down. Sheriff Jones, a good man but out of his depth, just sighed and said, "Marcus, you know who this is. They call their local enforcer El Martillo, the hammer. He likes to make a point. I can't touch them. The best I can do is tell you to sell." I thanked him for his time and reinforced the fence myself. I thought foolishly that my stubbornness, my refusal to be intimidated, would be enough. I thought this was a battle of wills. I forgot that men like El Martillo don't have wills. They only have appetites. Last night, they stopped sending warnings. The attack came just after midnight. Buster's frantic barking was the only alarm we had. I was out of bed in an instant, my old instincts screaming. A hail of automatic gunfire ripped through the living room, shredding the hand-stitched quilt on the couch, shattering the wedding photos on the mantel. They weren't trying to kill us, not yet. They were driving us out. Then came the crash of glass and the whoosh of ignited gasoline. Molotovs. One in the kitchen, one in our bedroom. The fire took hold with an unholy speed. My only thought was Sarah. I got her and Buster out the back, through the smoke and collapsing drywall, and into the relative safety of the cottonwood grove. From there we watched our world burn as the black SUV sped away, its taillights swallowed by the darkness. Now, as the first true rays of sun crested the horizon, illuminating the devastation, the grief in my chest began to cool and harden into something else, something cold, familiar, and terrifyingly calm. Sarah came and stood beside me, her hand finding mine. "What do we do, Marcus?" she whispered, her voice raw. I looked at the smoldering ruins, at the 20 years of peace and quiet they had stolen from me. They thought I was just some old rancher. They thought they could break me. They hammered a nail, but they hit a sleeping bomb. I squeezed her hand, then walked to my truck and pulled a small, heavy Pelican case from under the back seat. Inside, nestled in foam, was a satellite phone. I hadn't used it in a decade. I dialed a number I knew better than my own. It rang twice before a voice, crisp and alert, even at this hour, answered. This line is inactive. You have 10 seconds. Ghost, it's Shepard, I said, my voice a low growl. There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Shepard? Holy hell. You're Doc. You okay? Negative, I said, my eyes fixed on the smoke still rising from my home. Operation Phoenix Down is compromised. I'm calling in the pack. The silence on the other end was different this time. It wasn't shock. It was the sound of a switch being flipped. The sound of the world's most dangerous men getting ready for work. Understood, Ghost said, his voice now pure, cold steel. How many birds do you need? I looked at Sarah, her face illuminated by the cold blue light of the satellite phone's screen. The hope that had flickered in her eyes was now mixed with a deep, familiar fear. She knew that voice. She knew what calling in the pack meant. It meant the rancher she loved was gone, and the man she'd prayed she'd never have to see again was back. Shepard was back. 12 hours. That's how long it took. Not 24. 12. At dusk the sound wasn't a roar, but a whisper on the wind. A low thrum that vibrated in your bones. Over the far western ridge, a shape blotted out the stars. A black, unmarked MH-47G Chinook, flying low and fast with no lights, skimming the mesquite trees like a phantom. It didn't land near the wreckage of my house. It touched down for less than a minute in a dry creek bed a mile away, a place I designated long ago in a what-if scenario I never wanted to face. 15 men melted out of its belly and into the Texas scrubland. They moved with an economy of motion that was both beautiful and terrifying, their gear making no sound. They were ghosts in the twilight. At the front was Ghost himself, lean and wired, a tablet already glowing in his hand. Behind him was Tank, a man who looked like he could wrestle one of my bulls and win. Then Reaper, his face a calm mask, a long custom rifle case slung across his back. The rest were the finest operators our little community had ever produced, men who had followed me through the hells of Fallujah, the mountains of Afghanistan, and the jungles of God knows where. They came to the crest of the hill and saw the smoking ruin of my home. No one spoke. They didn't need to. I saw the look in their eyes. This wasn't a mission anymore. This was a blood debt. Tank took off his helmet and spat on the ground. They messed with the wrong flock, Shepard. We set up a command post in my barn, the one place they hadn't torched. The smell of hay and leather was replaced by the scent of gun oil and ozone from the electronics. Ghost had a satellite uplink running in minutes, his fingers flying across a keyboard. "Okay, Shepard," he said, and a face appeared on his screen. It was Ricardo, the man with the gold tooth. Ricardo Vargas, Lieutenant for the CJNG, Jalisco New Generation, sent here to establish a new logistics route through West Texas. He's ambitious. The local enforcer is Hector Gutierrez, a.k.a. El Martillo. The Hammer. Likes fire. Likes making examples. A new picture appeared. A heavy-set man with dead eyes and an ugly scar bisecting his eyebrow. He was one of the men who had been with Ricardo. They have a base of operations, Ghost continued, pulling up a satellite map. A fortified hacienda 10 miles east of the town of Del Rio. High walls, single point of entry, guards. It's where they store their product before moving it north. He zoomed in. I could see heat signatures, at least 30 of them. I looked at the men gathered around the screen. Their faces were grim, set. They were professionals, but they were also my brothers. These cartel thugs had declared war on one of us, which meant they had declared war on all of us. "This isn't a capture or kill mission," I said, my voice low and hard. "This isn't about sending a message. This is about erasure. We take El Martillo, we take Ricardo, and we burn their entire operation to the ground, just like they did to my home." A low murmur of assent went through the barn. This was the language they understood. The next few hours were a whirlwind of quiet, deadly preparation. Weapons were broken down, cleaned, and reassembled. Suppressors were fitted, magazines loaded with surgical precision, comms checked and double-checked. Sarah brought us coffee, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes resolute. She knew this was the only way. As full dark fell, we were ready. 15 shadows, faces smeared with black and green camo paint, moving out from the barn. We were a hunting party, and our prey was man. We moved across my land, the land they had violated, and melted into the night. An hour later we were in position. Reaper was on a ridge 1,000 yards away, nestled into the rocks, his rifle a seamless extension of his body. The rest of us were arrayed in the brush just outside the hacienda's perimeter wall. I brought the binoculars to my eyes. I could see guards on the wall, lazy and confident. I could see Ricardo through a window, laughing and drinking with El Martillo. They thought they were untouchable kings in their castle. They had no idea the devil was at their gate. I keyed my comms, my voice a whisper. "Reaper, you have the west tower?" "Solid copy, Shepard." His voice crackled back, unnaturally calm. "Target acquired. The party doesn't start till I say so." I looked at Tank beside me, his hand resting on a breaching charge. I looked at Ghost, monitoring their comms, a slight smile on his face. He held up a hand, then nodded. "They're talking about a bonus for the rancher job," he whispered. A cold fire surged through me. I raised my hand, fingers splayed. I keyed my comms again, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "Reaper, start the party." Through my binoculars I watched the guard in the west tower. His cigarette glowed bright, and then, in an instant, his head vanished in a pink mist. Before his body had even started to fall, Reaper's voice came over the radio, as cool and final as a tombstone. "First invitation sent." The silence shattered. Before the body in the tower even hit the ground, my team was moving. It was a symphony of controlled violence. Suppressed rifle fire answered Reaper's opening note, a series of precise metallic coughs that dropped the other perimeter guards like puppets with their strings cut. Tank slapped the breaching charge onto the main gate, the adhesive hiss barely audible. "Stand back," he grunted. The world went white and loud for a heartbeat, and the heavy iron gate blew inwards, twisted and mangled. We flooded the courtyard before the echoes had even died. It wasn't a fight. It was a reaping. The Cartel sicarios, roused from their drunken stupor, stumbled out with gold-plated pistols and flashy submachine guns, firing blindly into the darkness. We were the darkness. We moved from cover to cover, firing in disciplined 2-round bursts. They fell without ever seeing who shot them. Ghost was in my ear the whole time, a calm, disembodied voice directing traffic from the digital battlefield he saw on his tablet. 2 hostiles. Second-floor balcony, east wing. Neutralized. Heavy machine gun setting up in the garage. "Reaper, you see that?" "I see it," Reaper's voice replied, followed by the deep boom of his .50 caliber rifle from the ridge. The machine gun never fired a shot. I wasn't leading the charge. I was moving towards a specific point, Ricardo's office on the ground floor. My mission was personal. I kicked the ornate wooden door off its hinges. The scene inside was pure cliché. Ricardo was frantically stuffing stacks of cash into a briefcase. El Martillo, the hammer, was trying to pull a heavy desk in front of the door, his face a mask of sweat and disbelief. He froze when he saw me, his eyes wide. Ricardo looked up, and the gold tooth seemed to lose its shine. The predator was now prey. "You," Ricardo stammered. "Who are you? The feds? DEA?" "Worse," I said, stepping over the threshold, my rifle leveled. I let the barrel rest on El Martillo's chest. "You burned down the wrong ranch." Understanding dawned in El Martillo's eyes. quickly replaced by a stupid, defiant rage. He lunged not with a weapon but with his bare hands, the foolish brawler, to the very end. I didn't even flinch. I just sidestepped and brought the butt of my rifle around, catching him square in the temple. He went down like a sack of grain. Ricardo dropped the briefcase, cash spilling across the Persian rug. He raised his hands, a pathetic, pleading look on his face. "Wait, wait! We can make a deal. Money, anything you want. It was just business." "You made it personal," I said, kicking a can of gasoline one of their men had likely used on my home. It rolled to a stop at his feet. "My business is about balancing the books." I nodded towards the cash, the kilos of cocaine stacked on the table, the whole filthy enterprise. "You're going to watch your empire turn to ash, just like I watched my home." His face crumpled as I pulled out a Zippo lighter, the same kind he probably gave his men. I flicked it open. The small flame danced in the sudden, complete silence of the hacienda. The symphony outside was over. We didn't stay to watch the inferno consume the hacienda from the inside out. As we lifted off in the Chinook, the flames were just beginning to breach the roof, painting the night sky in those same sick oranges and reds. No one spoke on the ride back. There was nothing to say. When we landed back in the dry creek bed, the sky was beginning to soften in the east. Ghost clapped me on the shoulder. "Call us if the snakes come back, Shepherd." I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. One by one they disappeared back into the belly of the beast, and it rose into the air, a phantom vanishing with the night. I walked back to the ruins of my home alone. Sarah was standing there, by the smoking foundation, a thermos of coffee in her hands. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She just handed me a cup. The warmth spread through my cold hands. We stood together, watching the true dawn break over our land. The fire was out. All that was left was smoke, devastation, and us. "They won't be back," I said, my voice hoarse. "No," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "They won't." The sun rose over the scorched earth, but it wasn't a fire anymore. It was a new day. We had a lot of rebuilding to do.